Our Free and Equal segment tonight. Ready for new studies into gun violence? Well, they may be coming. The new omnibus spending bill will allow the CDC to conduct research on gun violence. Some gun control activists are cheering this decision. They've long argued that it was the NRA that pressured Congress to stop funding CDC studies on gun control. But that doesn't tell the complete story. The real reason Congress cut the CDC's budget to study gun violence is not something that you'll hear about from the left. So I'm going to show you now. With me to go through this, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, Erich Pratt. Erich, good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
All right, Erich, this is an interesting story. We hear this talking point often from the left, especially in the recent days, especially during the debates over the omnibus spending bill. They say the NRA pressured Congress to stop the funding going to the CDC to study gun violence, and that it's a matter of national health. This is a health crisis we need to study. But the reason that this happened, it was actually prompted by the NRA. The NRA blew the whistle on this. Let me read you some of the quotes that came from the CDC's research head. This is Patrick O'Connell back in 1989. He said, on behalf of the CDC, quote, "We're going to systematically build a case that owning firearms causes deaths." Then in 1993, Mark Rosenberg, and he's the director of the CDC National Center of Injury Prevention, said that he envisions a long-term campaign similar to tobacco use and auto safety to convince Americans that guns are first and foremost a public health menace. Is it any wonder that the NRA blew the whistle on this?
Oh, absolutely. They were engaging in advocacy for the gun control position. Another one of the CDC department heads during that time had made a statement that they wanted to treat guns the way cigarettes are now viewed, where they're dirty, deadly, and banned. And even Eric Holder, who, former Attorney General before he was Attorney General, made statements that he wanted to use a campaign ad to brainwash kids and he used the B word, actually brainwash kids on the subject of firearms. One of the big misnomers, though, was that Congress never actually cut funding to the CDC. They just said that the research they did couldn't be used for advocacy. It couldn't be used to advocate or promote gun control. So all along, CDC has actually still been doing research on guns. In fact, in 2013, they researched and looked at all the studies that examined how many times guns are used in self-defense. And to the left's surprise, guns are used 16 to 100 times more often to save life than to take life. Well, that was in Obama's CDC, or that came from Obama's CDC. So they've always been doing the research. They just weren't allowed to use the research for advocacy. And basically now with the recent omnibus, it's clarifying that they can still do research. They just can't use it to lobby or advocate the gun control position.
Right. And it's so funny to me that liberals are all up in arms saying, listen, we haven't had one of these studies in so long. This is a public health crisis. When it was literally 2013, that's less than 5 years ago, that Obama commissioned a $10 million CDC study. They don't want to talk about it, essentially, because it doesn't reflect positively on their calls for gun control, and it doesn't reflect negatively on firearms themselves. I mean, one of the most important conclusions from this Obama-funded study on gun control is that self-defense can be an important crime deterrent. I mean, you don't hear liberals saying that at all.
No. And if you go back to the 90s, one of the huge infractions, the CDC had commissioned a study, and you may remember Arthur Kellerman's name. He had come up with the bogus figure that a gun in the home is almost 3 times as likely to be used against you than you to use it in self-defense. And he would never release his data, well, with good reason, because finally, years later, when he was forced to release the data, it was very evident that he had cooked the numbers for the study. And so it was just one more thing. Of course, now all the studies that we see again is that actually you're much more likely to use that firearm. In fact, guns, again, 16 to 100 times more often used in self-defense. That was Obama's study in 2013. So we've actually seen the truth since then, but back in the 80s and 90s was kind of a dark age where CDC was using that money to advocate a gun
Right.
control position.
Right, and the scary thing is liberals still use the talking point that you just brought up that, oh, if you have a gun in the home, you're 3 times as
Yeah.
likely to be killed. They actually, it's even worse. They say to me, because I talk about the number of women, 200,000 times a year, women use firearms to defend ourselves against sexual abuse. Every time I point out this truth, this statistic, they say, no, 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 no. If you're a woman, you're 10 times as likely to be murdered if you have a gun in the home. It's based on that faulty study done by Kellerman. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's shocking to me that liberals think they can get away with it and that the mainstream media enables them getting away with using either faulty data, outdated studies, or just downright lies, let alone a government agency for political advocacy. Erich, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for being here.